So in this segment, we're going to be talking about this absolute numbskull, Barnabas Reynolds, talking about our markets must be freed from the stifling remnants of Brussels red tape, even though we would have played a key role in the formation of Solvency II. I mean, the stuff he's talking about here, talking about essentially weakening regulators. Have these people forgotten about the 2007-2008 financial crash? Genuinely, have they forgotten about it? Because it's a myth. It wasn't even that long ago. It wasn't even that long ago. As the country awaits its new Prime Minister, one central question for policy for the candidates and country will be how to boost the rate of economic growth and unleash the talents and entrepreneurship in Britain's businesses. Well, they've been stifled pretty dramatically by the B word. If we are to excel economically, painstaking work is now necessary to reform our legal and regulatory arrangements. I mean, he's talking about deregulation. He mentions the financial services where the City of London is a global leader. I mean, I think we're in the top three. Behind New York and Tokyo. Success needs free, competitive, and well-regulated financial markets. So they need to be free. So free regulations, I'm assuming. Competitive, to compete with other global stock exchanges, etc., and well-regulated. How can they be both free and well-regulated? How does that make any sense? Some of the words he comes out with are ridiculous in this article, because he talks through both sides of his mouth effectively. He goes, we need good regulations, but we also need freedom. How does that make sense? They conflict with each other. This allows, for the most efficient allocation of capital and power of our economy. He goes, the markets need rules, obviously. Duh. It's for the regulators to ensure that market participants have the information they need, that bad actors do not disrupt market pricing, and that buyers with long-term contracts can be assured that sellers will generally be around to deliver their obligations. So you need well-regulated financial markets, not free markets, effectively, in a sense. The UK's business-friendly regulatory regime has safely managed the financial markets for generation. I mean, we've laundered money for some of the best oligarchs and tyrants around. We're great at it. We managed to avoid the worst effects of the Wall Street crash in 2029. Did we? Because I'm pretty sure the Great Depression really impacted us quite badly. So I don't know if that's true. I don't think the UK was even a financial hub back then. Not really. We were more of a manufacturing economy because we still had remnants of the empire really at that point. There still might have been trade barriers in the way. We were, however, let down by the European Union's regulatory system with all its flaws in the financial crisis of 2007-2008. So now he's blaming the EU. He's blaming the EU's regulatory system. I couldn't tell you much about the EU's financial regulatory system back then. I genuinely couldn't. Solvency II came out, I think 2015, 2016, but blaming the EU for it when the EU set the base standard. And I can't believe I have to go through this like every other week. The EU set the base standard. It's up to other countries if they want to go higher than that. So the EU set the base standard. So this man who talks about the need for low regulations, right? How these regulations are stifling the UK. He's saying here that the EU had lower regulations which effectively helped cause a market crash in the UK. But then he also calls for lower regulations. I don't get these people. They don't make sense. He goes, which taught the EU and remind us that systemic risk, i.e. the risk rising from the system itself, is another factor to be managed by regulators. So again, that's calling for stronger regulations here in blue. He goes, now that we're out of the EU, we must reclaim our safe yet permissive methods. So the word permissive in this case would mean allowing a characterised by great or excessive freedom of behaviour, or allowed but not obligatory. So he wants rules that are obliged or not obligatory and genuinely seen as more free, more liberal, should we say. He wants a safe yet more liberal system. How does that make any sense? How does that make any sense? He goes, for that we must shake off the EU's controlling approach and purportedly exhaustive statutory regulations. I don't understand what this guy's saying. He's saying the EU were too lax in 2008. He's saying the EU were too lax, and then he's saying the EU are too strict now. As matters stand, the UK government proposes to move inherently EU regulations from our statute books to the rule books of our regulators. So what the government is saying, they want to get rid of regulations, right? And they want to allow the regulators to deal with stuff. So if they want to make things more strict, they can. If they want to make things more lenient, they can. Allowing them to reformulate those rules using their own statutory powers. So effectively what the government want to do is deregulate, right? They want to give the power to the regulator, who they want to deregulate everything. The regulator, they want to deal with that. And then once everything goes wrong, they're going to blame the regulator for it. They're going to, it's not our fault. Ofgem's running amok. It's not our fault. They're the independent regulator. It's what they're going to do to the Bank of England. Proposals to reform the main EU inherited insurance. And again, we didn't have to inherit this. We didn't have to. We chose to copy over these. Solvency 2 are being debated. They're also being debated in the EU about deregulation as well. So that's important to remember. Rapidly moving to the safe arrangements under which the UK market has functioned effectively, the future must allow the market to reward success, participants to bear the risk of their own failure, and regulators to protect the system and consumers from risk. Okay, again, he's talking out both sides of his mouth here, because effectively saying, reward success, that's what the market does, right? Privatise the profits, socialise the losses. Participants to bear the risk of their own failure, but regulators to protect the system and consumers. In 2008, what happened was the banks got greedy, overinvested, and if they were to bear the risk of their own failure, they would have crashed, and we would have had a much worse financial crash, and consumers would not have been protected from risk. Genuine ridiculous statements here. Again, both sides of his mouth. Two separate but related problems must be addressed. Those of the homegrown UK regulation and inherited EU rulebooks. Again, we played a key part in formulating the EU rulebooks. Is to address both issues, a clear direction and strength of purpose will be needed. And yet you've spoken out both sides of your mouth during this whole article. So you're not the person to be talking about a clear direction, because you want to be safe yet liberal. First, constraints are needed for how our regulators use their increased post-Brexit powers to make their rules. So you also want to stifle regulators more. You want the regulators to have all the power to deregulate, but then you want to also further constrain them and make them even weaker. He goes, there is no formal system of governance laid down for regulators to follow their new post-Brexit role. I mean, that's a weird one. That's what the government are trying to set out, I think. Instead, UK regulators are supposed to control their numerous staff as they will. That's not a bad thing? I mean, if a regulator, if their staff, or if a regulator thinks someone's doing bad, in the financial sector, if they're doing something illegal, yes, they should be able to tell their staff, look, you need to deal with this. You need to get someone to deal with this or speak to them. It makes perfect sense, I'll be honest. In principle, it's for Parliament, through its Treasury Select Committee, to oversee regulators in their use of powers it is given. That makes sense. You can, Bank of England staff have been dragged through the select committees in the past. However, though this can operate at a high level, it leaves the routine imposition of regulated systems unchecked. You've just acknowledged that they can drag them through the select committee if there are any issues. If businesses, they can write to their MPs. They can say, look, we've got these issues. Can you get the Treasury Select Committee to look into it? That's something that can happen. UK regulators should be required by statute to supervise and enforce predictability in accordance with their own published rules. I mean, that if they're not doing that again, they can drag that through the select committee, ensuring their decisions are consistent between firms which operate businesses of a similar size and scope. Again, select committee. There should also be independent checks by allowing firms to appeal to the courts. And again, you're trying to drag these regulators through the courts so they don't make certain decisions, because they're going to be scared, if I do this, I might get taken to court, or the department might get taken to court, which is expensive. During a short time period after the regulators have made significant supervisory or environmental enforcement decisions under their rules, for the courts to determine whether the statutory disciplines have been observed. And again, I think, yes, there should be oversight over regulators, most definitely, but dragging it through the courts simply wouldn't make any sense. You should drag them through the select committee, and they should have to answer why is this decision like this for this business when you've got another business of very similar size. Why are the rules different? That's something the select committee should be able to ask members of the Bank of England. This process would force the regulators to provide sufficient explanation of their decisions to withstand scrutiny and to serve as precedents for the future application of their rules, which I kind of get what he's saying, but dragging this through the courts just doesn't make any sense. This guy's a lawyer. He works for a huge law company and the author of rules for regulators regulating financial services. So I think what the reason is, this guy, he works for a law firm, right? If this stuff goes through the courts, he's going to make a lot of money out of it. That's the only way I can kind of see it's happening, because they can hire his law firm to take the regulators to court and say, look, why are you treating us differently from this other business, which might not even be the case. I did check them out. I know this is a different article. I did try and have a look, but yeah, this article is written is ridiculous. It's comical. The UK should be, strict but liberal. I don't get it. It's very confused. Very confused. He's trying to hide it through his phrasing, using words like permissive, characterized by great or excessive freedom of behaviour, allowed but not obligatory. I mean, come on, people, the audience. It's very obvious what this man's trying to do. Talk out both sides of his mouth. But yeah, anyways, look, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.